Today we are in week 2 of a month-long May series that is inspired by the book, This Life is Yours by Reverend Linda Martella Whitsitt. On Thursday nights, there is a Zoom study group class where you can dive in, go to one, or attend the whole series, but it's taking it a little more literally and going deeper. I said it's inspired by, so what I am doing is looking at the titles and the chapter, and then we're going original with that, taking bits and pieces of it. And so today, week 2 is titled Wholeness Mindset, Truth or Story. I'd like you to meet Bunny. Bunny has a story. This bunny definitely has a story. This bunny is well loved. This bunny is a great keeper of secrets. This bunny has traveled a lot, has lived a lot of different places. This bunny has magical powers. This bunny has the magical power of love, and this bunny has the power of healing. Now, everything I'm telling you about this bunny's story is 100% true based on a child's point of view. Some of the story is factually true. And some of the story was created from assumptions, therefore was made up. You too have a story. Congratulations, boy, have I got a story. Just like this bunny is about 50 years old, the person who this bunny belongs to threatened me with my life if I didn't get it back to them. Each of us, each of you have a story. And some of your story is factually true. And some of your story, actually a whole lot of your story, is based on assumption. And therefore we could say made up. We could even go a step beyond that and say we know we made up some of our story. And so the question becomes, are we aware that we have a story? We all do. It's a very normal thing. It's actually a necessary thing to have a story. Barry Lopez said, everything is held together with story, including us. We all have a story, but when was the last time you did some proofreading? When was the last time perhaps you edited some of your story? Have you parts and chapters that you may have told so much, you just keep parroting that story that may have been crafted when things were magical? Or someone once told me, don't plant your roots in fairy dust. And I love fairies, but I knew what they meant. There comes a time when you have to be rooted in a true foundation. And so when was the last time we did some proofreading and some edits? And are we aware that quite often we may be literally living our life from the inside of a story versus realizing we have the story, but the story does not constitute all that we are? We want to dig into that today when we talk about a wholeness mindset and is it truth or story? Now, if you look to Scripture, and I'll pull from some various sources today, but if I look to the Gospel of John, and these words are attributed to Jesus, there's a place where Jesus said, you're in the world, but not of the world. A modern day edit could be, you're in your story, but your entire constitution does not come from the story. You're in the world, you're in the story, you're in it. But you're not of it. You're more than that. And so what's your story? As I was working on that this week, I thought about a very memorable time in my life when somebody literally said those words, "So what's your story?" So let me give you a little backstory. This was the early to mid 1990s. I had interviewed for a new job with a new company. A top executive had flown in to Raleigh, North Carolina. I was interviewed, and a couple of weeks later I was called and I was offered a position to start with this brand new company called Brio. They offered me a position and they said, we're getting ready to have the International Toy Fair in New York. It's our big deal every year, so as soon as that's over, we'd like for you to start. I was so excited. And then the next day I got a call, and it was the national sales manager, and said, "Welcome. Well, I know you're going to be joining us, and I've decided, if you're willing, I'm going to overnight a ticket to you." Now let's pause and just say thank you, universe, thank you, Jesus. Do you remember the day they had to overnight you an airline ticket? And now you just download an app. Well, they said, if you're willing, this was a Friday, we're going to overnight an airline ticket to you and have you fly in Sunday so that you can be here Monday. And I'm like, sure, that sounds great. I don't know the first thing about my job or the company. Oh, that's fine. Just come, and this is the best place for you to see the product, to learn about it, meet everybody. I'm game. Sounds great. So I got my ticket. I packed my suitcase to be in New York City at the International Toy Fair in February. I was so excited, I packed my best clothes, get on my plane. Remember, it's New York City in February, so there's some delays. So I get there very late Sunday night. I go to get my luggage, and there's no luggage. That's a bad feeling when that carousel empties and your suitcase is not there. It's already late. I make my way, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. We got a lot of luggage, just didn't make it. We got you here. We'll get your luggage to you as soon as we can." So I'm staying at the Marriott Marquis on Broadway. Taxi cab gets me there. It's very late, and I have to be at a breakfast meeting, my first meeting with a new company, early the next morning. How well do you think I slept that night? Every time I heard a noise, I thought, is that my luggage? Is that my luggage? God, please let that be my luggage. Luggage didn't arrive. The next morning comes, and so all I have is what I wore on the flight. Yeah. So I show up, and I'm in my room, and I'm sort of just a basket case. I'm starting to work myself up. You know when you go into storytelling mode? I'm really getting there. And I just had to stop a minute and sit down and said, "Darlene, just breathe, breathe." And I felt myself say to myself, and it probably became because of my mother. Because in times like this, my mother would say, "It's gonna be okay." And so I got quiet and I told myself, "You're okay. It's gonna be okay. And I'm grateful to be here." So I cleaned up as much as you can clean up from what you wore in a long, delayed airport situation. And I go to breakfast. And we're seated at these tables. There's my nameplate. Everybody else is dressed to the nines, not the new hire. And so when I find my place at the table and I sit down, that's when the lady beside me looked at me and said, "So what's your story?" So what's your story? Thank God I'd taken that moment to connect, because I was able to smile and say, well, it's actually a long story. It's going to be okay. I'm grateful to be here. And the airline lost my luggage. Her next line was, "Oh, honey." Oh, honey. So we had our breakfast, and she said, "Just come to my room. I got a jacket, a blazer." So she helped, and I got through the first day. Thank God, after my first day, when I got back to the room, there was my luggage. Now, I learned from that story, it gave me great compassion about, number one, new hires. Number two, anybody who's ever lost their luggage or lost their belongings, I have deep empathy. And number three, if you've ever had to go commando and didn't plan it, that's not a great experience. There's things you can always learn and ways you can always grow in appreciation. So what's your story? The other thing I know about story is in journalism, there's an expression that says, don't bury the lead. Basically, it means that you should write the most important thing first. When we're talking about our story, it means that we need to remember the most important thing first. Now, we've all got stories. We have unique stories. Our stories change. But at the heart of your story, don't bury the lead. At least know what your lead is, because your story, what is leading your story, the story of your life, is either I am ultimately okay or not. That every person on the face of this earth, at the core of them, is a driving force, an energy. It is the lead, their story's seed, and its roots are in, ultimately, I am okay. Now that can mean everything is falling apart at the moment. Do you know what it feels like for everything to be falling apart at the moment, and yet deep, deep, deep inside you still know, ultimately, I am okay. That's a great gift to know that. But so often the lead gets buried, it gets lost. And we get so focused on what's missing. You see, when she asked, so what's your story? If I had not taken a few moments and had my own come to Jesus moment and connected with my own okayness, when she said, so what's your story? I would have immediately gone into what was wrong, what was missing, what was lost. I may have gone into defense mode, because I felt a little judged initially. I felt a lot less than when I walked in. I felt like I had some explaining to do, because I did. But if I buried the lead and started there in defense mode, in explanation mode, in trying to measure up mode, can you see how that there's something in me, I would just perpetuate that versus first getting connected and really grounded in, it's going to be okay. I'm thankful to be here. And right now, this is missing. Right now, this is lost. Right now, this needs some attention. How many of you resonate with that at any area of your life? So what's your story? Lori Gottlieb says, our circumstances shape our stories. But often what goes unnoticed is that our stories actually shape our circumstances. The way we narrate our lives shape what our lives become. So what in your life are you in touch with your story lead? We want to take a few minutes and look at some questions. 3 questions, 3 useful things that you can ask yourself that will help you uncover perhaps where we've gotten stuck in a story or we've lost sight of what we really do know to be true. The first question we ask ourselves, is there anything keeping me diminished? Is there any story I tell? Is there any experience that I've had in that, experiences can be diminishing. Experiences can hurt. Experiences can change everything. But the point is that our soul can still be alive and well. And so when we ask ourselves, is there anything keeping me diminished? Is there anything that is keeping me diminished that would cause the diminishing story to be the lead in my foundational story? Back to a story from Scripture, the Gospel of chapter 9. It says, and Jesus went along and he saw a blind man, a man who was blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Essentially, the disciples were saying, so what's his story? And the reply was pretty profound. Jesus said, neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was saying, this is not about karma. This is not about something he did to make this happen. Neither his parents or the man sinned. He said, but this occurrence is such that the presence of God may be made manifest in him. Whatever the story is, can you look at it and say, it's so that the divine potential can be revealed here, that there is something seeking to be manifest. Let that be the story lead, not what's broken, what needs to be fixed, and not getting so caught up in the why. Now, it's important to ask why. It's important to do self-reflection. It's important to have good facts and be continually self-evaluating. But if we get stuck in the why loop, we never get into a growth and transformation loop. And so is there anything keeping me diminished? I want to tell you a true story about a woman named Loveland. These are her words. She said, I used to watch people on the streets and in restaurants and think their boisterous conversations and broad smiles were evidence that they lived life much better than mine. I assumed they were happier than me, they were smarter than me, they were worth more than me. All around me was evidence that this was true. I had a meager bank account, I had a junky car, and I wore thrift store clothes. I would sit in my apartment and try to imagine what it would be like to be someone else. I wondered what it would be like to be someone who could afford to go to the movies anytime or go out and eat, someone who bought new clothes and shoes and had a good job. I even imagined this, but it felt hard. It seemed like life was stacked against me. And then I stumbled across Tony Robbins on a YouTube. And it caught my attention because I heard him say, you are not as limited as you believe. He said, can you believe bigger than your limiting beliefs? Can you believe bigger than your limiting beliefs? She said the first step in changing a limiting belief is identifying it. So she began to look at her own thoughts, her own beliefs, her own story. And she said, I realized I had a story of not being enough. You see, her lead was not okay, something missing. And because that was what was leading her story, she said, I told it so long I couldn't see beyond that. I thought it was true. But at my heart, as I began to really, what I would call do some proofreading, some editing, she said it was actually ridiculous. I realized that I had friends and I had family that loved me. I loved me, and I knew I was loved. When I looked at my life objectively, I realized I had accomplished a lot. I had been very good as a student in school. I had a journal where I wrote, and I thought that my writing was good. I always went out of my way to be kind and helpful. And she said, so I began to realize that I needed to find roots for a new story that were rooted in something true about me. Instead of actually taking refuge in the narrative or in the story that something was missing. I want to show you a PowerPoint. Loveland, her full name is Loveland Bettison. And we wish her a happy Mother's Day. And then we go on. Loveland is an author and an artist who helps people conquer their fears and reclaim their dreams. I could not fit them all on the screen. I want you to see how young she is. These are the books, the successful books she has written thus far. This experience prompted her willingness to look at her own story prompted her to start writing stories, and as it turns out, she's a great writer and is very successful in that field. Thank you for that slide. So is there anything keeping me diminished? And are there areas in my life where I really need to look at what I'm telling myself and what is my lead? What is typically leading my thoughts, leading my feelings, and leading my actions and my reactions? Is it the story of I am ultimately enough, learning and growing, but the spirit of who I am, the soul of who I am is always enough? And it means that even though I may not have the skills, the know-how, I may not have done this properly yet or figured it out yet, the key word here is yet, because I'm a work in progress. So the second one then is, who or what is helping me uphold that limiting story? And who or what is helping me live into our ultimate story? If you look around this room, these people are helping you live into your ultimate story, the story of helping you lead from that story. Kinga Lewandowski said or wrote, "Beliefs and stories tend to be stiff. Once formed, it may be hard to modify them, especially because they like to develop in our formative years. The longer we hold on to our beliefs and our stories, the more they calcify in our bones, ingrain in our nature, and grow like vines around our heart. If we live in an environment that shares or even enforces our beliefs and our story, it gradually becomes harder to step out of our head and challenge what's in it." So who or what in your life is upholding a diminishing story? And who or what helps you live into an ultimate story? I want to tell you about a second person named Phil. Phil later realized that one of the things that helped him uphold a limiting story was perfectionism. Now, sometimes it's things that we don't even realize how they're working in our lives. So let me tell you Phil's story. When he was a kid, he was a bit of a perfectionist, but he was also an incredible artist. He loved to draw. He had a very unique style of drawing called pointillism. As a little kid, he would draw circles, but he would throw the papers away unless all the circles were exactly perfect. Even as a little kid, he drew little teeny perfect circles. As he got older, he began to realize that he could connect those little perfect circles together and create these incredible pieces of art, these incredible drawings. His talent, his artistic abilities were truly exceptional. By the time he was in high school, people were asking to buy some of his work. It was so good. But by the time he was in high school, he started realizing his hand was really, really hurting because for years he had been holding that so tight to get those little circles so perfect, so pointed, it was hurting his hand. He would try to do what he could, shake it off. He got into an art school, continued to pursue his dream. Now he's in art school and he's drawing, and his professors say, "Wow, you've got a real talent for this. It's a very unique skill." But not only did his hand start hurting, now it started shaking. He developed a tremor. And for someone who wanted to draw a perfect anything, have you ever tried to write something even when you're nervous and it looks like a chicken wrote it? Well, for this guy his life was about these perfect circles, it was devastating. His mom insisted he go see a doctor. He went to see a doctor, and they said, "You've got some damage here. It's not going to go away, that it's nerve damage, and there's nothing you can do about it." He was so distraught, so devastated, "I can't do it." His perfectionism came falling down on him like a ton of bricks. He dropped out of school, and he said for 3 years he just drifted. He drifted like he was completely lost in every area of his life. He was sinking down so low that after 3 years, a friend convinced him, "Go back, see another doctor." So he went to another neurologist. He saw another neurologist. They checked his hand, and the neurologist confirmed, "You have permanent nerve damage. You are always going to have a tremor in that hand." But this neurologist said, "What would happen if you embraced the shake?" And he said it's like a light bulb went off in his head, and he said, "What would happen if I embraced the shake?" I want to show you a picture of Phil Hansen. He's got a great TED Talk you can watch. So what Phil began to do, if you look at his art now, the lines aren't perfect. They're little squiggly lines. He also is the guy that will take a pepperoni pizza and put his hands in the grease and karate chop a picture of somebody. He's done some amazing, incredible things. And he said, if I never learned to embrace the shake, I would have never known myself beyond what it was to be someone who could perform at a level of perfect. But what happens when you can't do it that way anymore? And so what helps us uphold our diminishing story, and what is helping us live into the ultimate story? And perhaps, is there something that we need to embrace? That when you embrace it, I've had many people tell me when they share a story with me, they would talk about something they wanted to do, they felt so called to do, and they would say, "But I'm so afraid. Or I have so much doubt, and if I have this much fear and this much self-doubt, then maybe it's not God's will. Maybe I shouldn't do it. And I typically would usually ask, but what would it be like if you learned to walk with your fears? What would it be like if you learned to walk with your doubts? Rather than waiting for them to go away, what if you embrace them as a normal part of life? We had an interfaith service here just a couple of weeks ago, and sitting beside me was someone representing the Buddhist community. And right as it was about to begin, she leaned over and said, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "A little bit." And she said, "Do you still get nervous?" I said, "Every time before I speak, it's not a bad nervous, but there's this sense of anticipation. So yeah, I feel that." And she said, "I'm so thankful because I get so nervous." And she told me after, she said in order to lead Sangha in her Buddhist community, she literally had to sign up for a theater group to force her to walk with her fear. But what such a great teaching, because we can learn by people who are real, people who are saying, yeah, I still have some self-doubt, I still have fears, I'm still learning, I'm still overcoming, and I've embraced that. I've embraced that as part of our story, part of our humanity, and I'm learning to live in a bigger context. That's the point. That's what Phil lived. How can I express and share my gifts as I know myself in a bigger context, a bigger story? So is there anything keeping me in a diminishing story, a limiting story? Who or what holds that in place, and who or what helps me move beyond it? And then number 3, is there anything keeping me from being soft at my edges and open at the top? Richard, would you please join me? Tara Brach, who in my opinion is one of the best meditation teachers out there today, Buddhist, she shares a story. If you know Tara Brach, she has experienced some physical health issues, challenges that she's had to learn how to be with, continually expanding her circle of who she knows herself to be, widening her story so that it doesn't get so narrowed that she can't find joy in it. She writes, "I try not to think how I used to be. I can let go of the younger me, the one who won Yoga Olympics by holding wheel pose for more than 18 minutes. I can let go of the woman who ran 3 miles on most days, who loved to ski and boogie board and bike and play tennis. But what about being able to just wander the hills and the woods around my home? What about walking along the river? Can I continually let go and open? Can I meet my edges and soften, feeling and flowing into the loving presence that is right here?" So what's your story? And are you aware of your lead, or does it sometimes get buried? Is there anything keeping you diminished or in a limiting story, and you may not even be aware of it, but you're responding to life by allowing that to lead? Are you aware of things that help hold that in place, and are you aware of the things that can help free you, help you let the lead be your ultimate truth? And is there anything keeping you from having soft edges? Soft edges simply means, yeah, that may appear to be a limitation, but it doesn't define me. And open at the top, I'm still learning. I'm still experiencing myself in new ways. I'm going to lead you into a meditation that is adapted from Tara Brach, and I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. I'll begin with a song by Karen Drucker that says, "So I breathe in and I breathe out, and I take in and I give out, and I let love and I let go. I release And I know. So with your eyes closed, let yourself imagine the space between your eyes. And now let yourself imagine the space between your ears. Let yourself imagine that region between your forehead and the back of your skull as filled with space. Let yourself sense that your hands are filled with space. Now breathe gently into the space that is your whole body. Let your whole body feel spacious. Let yourself imagine that space within your body. And now that space extends outside of your body and into this room. And that space extends beyond this room, outside of these doors. And that space outside the doors begins to extend further and further, literally wrapping around our globe, flowing throughout the cosmos. It's the same spaciousness. Notice your awareness of this spaciousness. And let yourself rest in this wakeful and open spaciousness. Let the boundaries of your being soften. And now bring your awareness back to your breath. Bring your awareness back into your hands and begin to just wiggle your hands and your fingers. Feel your awareness directing. Bring your awareness back into your legs and your feet and maybe wiggle your toes a little bit. Feel your awareness back in your body. But always know that you are so much more than the physical body. You are so much more than any snapshot in time. That you are part of the awareness. And that awareness knows no limitation to being. And it's there with you wherever you are. So I breathe in and I breathe out and I take in and I give out and I let love, and I let go. I release, and I know. So I invite you to gently open your eyes and bring back a smile. Just smile. Feel what comes up behind that smile. Join me in this song if you know it. I breathe in and I breathe out. And I breathe out. I take in. I take in and I give out. And I give out. I let love. I let love and I let go. And I let go, I release, and I know, so I breathe in, and I breathe out, and I take in, and I give out. And I let love, I let go, I release, and I know. So what's your story? Whatever you do, don't bury the lead.